9 on the agenda involving the beautiful Savior Lutheran Church is to be removed and not to be considered tonight. So with that change, do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
And anything line? Hearing none. Next item on the agenda is for any audience discussion for any items not on the agenda. On the agenda tonight our election of some officers, a PUD master plan for Bridgeview Plat 2, and a Stewart Plat of survey. Does anyone in the audience have any comments they'd like to make unrelated to those items? Hearing none, we'll go on to item 5 of the agenda, which is approval of the P&Z Commission meeting minutes for October 15th, 2018.
Move to approve. Second.
And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone declining? And anyone who is choosing to abstain? So that motion is approved. Item 6 on the agenda is election of Planning and Zoning Commission officers. Item 6A is to elect a new chairperson for the 2019 term. Kind of our history on this is that we take the pro tem from the prior year and move them up to be the chairman for the current year. And then for the pro tem, have the individual who has gone the longest tenure here without having served as the pro tem since then. And so I think it's pretty clear on both of those items, but would want to entertain some names. Do you have anything, Gary, that you'd like to mention?
No, sir. You did a very good job of summarizing.
Oh, good. So I would entertain some motions on that.
Same time.
Oh, in prior years we've done it separately.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I was going to say,
so
you got,
a motion.
if you want to motion yourself in.
No, and the first one would be
Yeah.
for the chairperson.
I'll make a motion that we elect Doug Olfest as the next chairman for 2019.
And a second on that.
Second.
And I think I'll go with a verbal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone fine? Now on to election of the pro tem for 2019.
I will. Yeah, see what you're going to do yourself? Tell me to do
Oh,
it?
you can do it.
Make a recommendation that Dennis Dietz is our chairperson pro tem.
I'll second.
And all those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone decline? Any nays, rather?
Sorry.
Have talked to our new chairman pro tem, and he will have me go ahead and share the rest of the report tonight. Item 7 on the agenda is to consider a motion to recommend to council approval of a planned unit development master plan for Bridgewood Plat 2. And could you go ahead and state also your name and address, please?
Sure. My name is Jerry Oliver. I'm the civil consultant, 2486 Illinois. I'm here with Tom Whitman, who's with Nat Properties. They are the property owner and the applicant in this master plan. You're probably fairly familiar with this property, but it is located on the west side of Parker Boulevard, immediately north of Ridgeview Plat 1, and it's bounded on the west and somewhat on the north by Corps of Engineers property, in which there is an existing bike or pedestrian path that goes through the woods, fairly close to the north side of this plat, and then continues on down to the ball fields. Likewise, there's a connection that comes over to Bridgeview Plat 1. This is a 20-acre piece, and it has quite a history to it in that some time ago in 1986, there was a PUD that was approved on this property, of which I have an illustration just for reference. Our property is the area in red, and this was a long time ago. I even had red hair back then when this was approved. It had a loop street that went through the property. It proposed several 8-plex townhomes on the property. And it also included property on the east side of Parker Boulevard, which subsequent to this approval, there was a PUD amendment that came through that changed a lot of the property on the east side of Parker to some townhomes down to the south and then some single family, but also in the process of that amendment, it voided this PUD. So that's kind of history and gone.
So it looks like Parker was built a little further east.
Yeah, I think Parker was a little bit farther east because, here's Adams. There are existing single-family lots here. There were a couple of lots put in here, and I think a couple up here, and then a lot of it's park. Then subsequent to that, you had a PUD change that proposed Bridgeview Plat 1, which is shown here in yellow, and that's essentially built out, or at least all the streets and improvements are in, and a lot of houses are there now. But as a part of that concept plan, there was also this plan put together, which shows the property that we're talking about today up here to the north. It showed some interconnecting streets, and likewise there's sanitary sewer and water that comes up from the south that would serve this piece. So this was not an approved master plan, but it was a concept to try to reinforce the fact that Bridgeview Plat 1 works and that there are connecting streets. So we're here tonight to present a master plan for the Knapp property, which is this proposal, which has Parker Boulevard on the east, Bridgeview Plat 1 to the south. You might have noticed that on the original concept plan that there were quite a few more streets in this plan than this. And in fact, if you start adding up the footages, there's about 1,000 lineal feet less street on our plan than on this plan. And that's really intentional in that, as you're well aware, there's quite a few trees on the property. Some of it's pretty brushy. But in an effort to try to reduce the amount of street that's on the property, and hence the amount of clearing that would be required to construct the street, we felt it was reasonable to connect to the existing street here in Bridgeview Plat 1 and loop a street back out to Park. And likewise connect to the dead-end street that's also in Bridgeview Plat 1 and create a cul-de-sac. And in doing so, we have considerable less street than is on the old concept plan that was not yet approved. Also in our plan, we are showing a 35-foot buffer that is all along the Corps of Engineers property, which I think is required. I don't know, is that by the Corps? I don't know for sure. Is that just your policy?
The 35-foot strip is now in code. It was an agreement between the city and the Corps.
So we're showing the 35-foot wide strip. We're also showing some parkway trees that are required by the ordinance that are actually out in kind of the open area. As you drive by, there's kind of a vacant area before you get to the treed area. So this will be a plantings that take place within that open area. As I mentioned, there is sanitary sewer and water connections that come up from the south, also make connections to the water main in Parker Boulevard. We're also proposing that there would be a 20-foot wide connection, bike path connection that would go from our sidewalks and connect to the trail that's really close to our north property line. And that would be a dedicated 20-foot wide strip that the developer would then also install the bike path itself as a part of the parkland dedication requirements. Many of these lots are quite deep. Some of them would be in the range of even 200 to even 300 feet deep in some places. Detention would take place down here in the southwest corner of the site, which is kind of the lowest area of the property, and then ultimately it would discharge into Corps of Engineers ground under a culvert that goes under the bike path. We'd be happy to answer questions that the commission has, either Tom or myself. We have gone through the staff report and made a resubmittal, and it's my understanding that this proposal meets all the comments that were initially made by Snyder Associates.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick housekeeping item for folks that are here. Kind of our normal process to review these kinds of items is we hear from the applicant, then we will hear from staff, and then we'll open it up to the audience if anyone here has anything they'd like to say about it. And then the commission will actually review it at that point in time. So I'll turn it over to staff comments.
I really don't have much to add. I mean, since they did address our comments, we did look at it with respect to the new tree ordinance. And really felt that in terms of the number of trees, the fact that they are reducing the length of the street by 1,000 feet, that's also 1,000 foot of corridor where trees don't need to be removed. So this plan is taking, by that standard, is taking out substantially less trees than the prior concepts, either of the prior concepts would have. And this new street that would come through, and I will say Pelican Drive, the distance between Pelican Drive and Edgewater to the south does exceed 1320, which is your maximum block length. But in order to save 1,000 foot by at least 60 foot, probably a little bit more of trees, it seemed like, and considering that this is all single family, so the number of homes is low, we felt that was a good trade-off, and a PUD master plan, allows you to make that adjustment to your.
Okay. Anyone in the audience have any comments they'd like to make about this proposal? If so, please state your name and address. Rick.
Well, my name is Joe Brew, and I live in 1620 Seagrass. So I'm a corner lot that'll probably be affected most, as do my neighbors here as well. I guess I really wanted to review the plan and see what was going to happen to the try and understand a little bit too on the proposed construction entrance, how the intend to manage that. We got a lot of small kids in the area. I'd like to hopefully understand that that's been considered and controlled.
Okay. I think what I'd like to do is hear from everyone and then maybe have a petitioner answer some of the questions on to staff. Just out of curiosity, are you on the east or the west end of Seagrass?
I am on the corner of Seagrass,
Okay.
so west end.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, my name is Chad Baker, and I'm at 1530 Seagrass, so I'm more on the west side. And I really just wanted to also get an idea of what to expect in terms of the trees that would be kept or not kept in our backyard, because that's obviously very important to us. That's all.
Okay.
Jared Boss, 1520 Seagrass. I just wanted to say, when I bought the property, I knew the day would come that this property was going to be developed, and I appreciate looking at the two different plans, what they've done to be able to preserve what trees they can. I was kind of hoping to see kind of what Chad said is, some sort of buffer between the homes that are already along Seagrass and the lots that are close to the north. I mean, that's one of the reasons we looked at those properties and ultimately purchased those, was because it provided a lot of benefits, a little bit of privacy, interaction with wildlife, and the things that the natural environment provides us. So I guess what I'd like to see is kind of a detailed plan as to what trees are going to be kept, what trees are going to be removed, and maybe consideration of something back there.
And would like to respond to any of those?
Sure.
Well, given the layout of our streets, there would be just 4 lots that are adjacent to the property to the south. We're extending these 2 dead ends, so there would be, actually, this is a detention area, but there would be a lot there, one there, one there, and one there. So the way our long, deep lots are set up, for example, lot 19 abuts 3 lots within your subdivision, and the same thing over here on this side. So it's not as if we're packing them in and putting a street east and west and backing all our lots onto your lots. That's not the case. I guess as far as a construction entrance, I mean, we do have our proposed access off of Parker. And I would expect that much of the construction equipment would be coming in and out of that. But I would not say that there would be no construction traffic on this, because, you know, we are connecting onto the sanitary sewer and the water main, and in some cases the storm sewer at the ends of these dead-end streets. So there will be activity that will take place at those dead-end streets from the standpoint of tree clearing for the right-of-way, and likewise the extension of the sanitary sewer. So with your comment, I think we can try to get our contractors to use the Parker access as far as the primary access. But another thing I will tell you is that this is a master plan, and that if this is recommended for approval and approved by the council, that we will be back with a preliminary plat that will be more specific than what this is. It will show where the sanitary sewer, the water, it'll show the corridor that would be cleared. So there is more detail that will come in the next step. It's just that we didn't want to go to that step. There was, you know, big trouble with this concept. So as far as a buffer goes, you know, I would say really the only lots that are affected much are the ones that are on the very corners, and maybe that's where you are, because you could be looking at the side of a house if you're on the corner lots. Those lots that are in the middle of seagrass, they probably won't be able to see a house because it's really a deep rear yard. In fact, I would say these yards are probably in the range of like 300 feet deep. So there is a fairly large open space that is between the cul-de-sac and the loop street, this area.
So I'm not sure if you looked online to see what the packet was for tonight, but what they're asking for is actually a reduction in the setback on the street so that the houses can be built a little closer to the street to make the backyards larger in order to impact fewer trees. So that's one thing that is being proposed out of this as well. Any more questions from the audience?
I'd just say that, I mean, we are the corner lots, so that's why, I mean, as you said, it's going to affect us the most. That's just where we're concerned, where we will be looking at someone's side of their house. So it'd be nice to have some sort of buffer, maybe if it was similar to what's over there along the foreground.
Well, our intent is to save as many trees as we can. And those are valuable assets to you and to the future buyers of these lots. But, you know, I will say it will be different than what you have today, obviously.
So anyone from the commission have comments and questions?
Yeah, Kathleen, help me with the tree ordinance, because it's kind of there on lots 19, 35, 50.
Yeah, well, in terms of, I mean, the tree ordinance, I kind of put the main points in terms of, actually, these are actually related to a development plan, but I thought I wanted to bring them up now, it's related to a preliminary plat. I wanted to bring them up so that we, you know, didn't change gears between the development plan and the upcoming preliminary plat. The first one was whether an excessive or unnecessary number of existing trees are to be removed, taking into consideration the city's goal of preserving existing trees and any reasonable alternatives available to the developer. I guess from staff's perspective, we felt that there were two other proposals out there, and this one, so there were alternatives out there. The streets have already been stubbed up there in terms of those connection points. That's a given in terms of looping, you know, street continuity as well as looping utilities. So we felt like this plan improved over prior plans. Item B on the memo is just whether the applicant has provided for the replacement of existing trees to be removed at other locations. And again, they are showing the parkway trees that would be going in. In addition, each single-family home is required to plant a tree in the front yard now. So that's also part of a replacement. See whether the landscaping provides a visual buffer when necessary from the surrounding property, including headlight screen for streets. In the Parker Boulevard buffer would, although I'm not sure, some of it lays lower, so I don't know that headlight screening is a big issue there. I haven't looked real closely at where that break is, but I do know that part of it sets lower too. So I think between the two, you've got that benefit on the other side. And you're not really going to get headlights per se on the side yards probably. Whether D is whether the streets, sidewalks, and lots are laid out in a manner to preserve existing trees where feasible, where the applicant must provide fencing off or protect the trees during construction to the extent possible. And that will be something that we look at. You know, the tree removal areas on the preliminary plat, and then the construction drawings will actually show construction fencing so that we know the contractor stays out of those areas. So that's kind of a down the road kind of a thing. But we will, the areas that are shown on the preliminary plat that are to be saved, and again, the construction drawings will provide the mechanism for doing that, because sometimes the guy out on Bobcat is the last person to really know what trees are supposed to be saved. So that'll be a requirement. And then E, whether parkways are designed in accordance with the comprehensive plan. Parker Boulevard is a parkway, and they are showing up the required 15-foot parkway easement along there as well.
My question is a little more specific.
Okay.
On lots 19, 35, 50 that are on the south side of this, that border, north side of here on Seagrass, you have the developer, builder, and you have the owner. What can they and cannot do with the trees that are on that lot right now?
Well, I mean, there's
Can
nothing.
they tear them all down?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a covenant or anything
They can
in
take
place.
them all out.
But the whole property owner could. Yeah. As it is
And,
now. I mean, there'd be no.
and as we kind of go up that area, the backyard, as we proceed north, those property owners could also do the same thing.
True, that is true. I mean, unless there's some type of a covenant that's put on the property.
Okay. I just wanted the gentlemen that are here to realize that.
Yeah, I mean,
It's their property and they can go tear those trees all out. Wouldn't have anything.
Yeah, I mean, what the developer does with the plat is one thing, and then when the builder comes in, typically they don't go back in the back of the yard. I mean, they don't clear a lot more trees than they have to, but it doesn't mean that they can't. And then the property owner, once they move in, could also trees.
Now, the tree ordinance, now, will some of those trees not be able to be removed because of the type of tree or size?
You don't have that. You didn't go.
Okay.
That was something we looked at and did not go that restrictive on with your ordinance. So there's no specimen trees.
I want to make sure too, because we have a similar situation for Pine Ridge there. The developer right now has left about a 20-foot strip between the property line. They've actually rearranged. But the property owner, if they whoever buys that property behind us, if they wish to remove do so. Because
It's residential to
residential,
residential.
and so we have the same, so you have to understand that, whoever purchased that property has rights to that property they can do with it. So, and because it's residential to residential, there's no requirement of some sort of buffer between it. A commercial property or something that we have this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, if I recall correctly, the property to the south is even zoned more intensely because it's actually zoned R3, even though it's constructed as single-family residential.
So, yeah, that's the.
So I do have a couple of questions, and concerns. One is on the bike trail segment. Just a quick question on that. You show it just going out to the sidewalk and not to the street, at least on this concept diagram. We've had a couple of bad cases, or a bad case and some good cases in our city, and so I think I'm going to start watching that a lot more closely. What I'm always fearful of is, I'm not, this doesn't go into detail, so I'm not sure if there's a storm sewer easement that's going there that is going to be used as a park, anything of that nature. But we do have a case in our city. I had just went out and took a couple of pictures of a trail that just comes out to a sidewalk.
Mhm.
Then it is grass between the sidewalk and the street, and then we have our intakes for the storm sewer here, meaning that could never be extended cheaply. In the same development, going to the Neil Smith Trail, I might add, this is not a real wide trail. It's a wide sidewalk trail. We do have a recreational trail in the same development that goes to the Neil Smith Trail that does come out to the street, that is working perfectly for the neighborhood as I look at it. I would like to see whoever makes a motion for this, if you guys think it's important, to ask that this gets extended out to the street.
The only thing I would say is we do then need to put a reciprocal on the other side, which is fine. It's just that it would need to cross the street. ADA requires, if you have a ramp going down to the street, that they have an ADA compliant ramp on the other side.
But there's not one here.
That's a code change.
Okay.
You will notice Bridgeview right to the south does have a reciprocal crossing.
Has one over
It
there.
has on both
Okay.
sides.
Over
Yep.
in his lot.
Yeah, just south of lot 16, between lot 16 and 17, you'll see that on the east side of the street there is
Okay.
just something to be aware of.
So that's one question or concern that I did have. Another one, which is a large, I guess, heartburn for me, is when we had initially talked about the concept for this the last time, back when the property to the south was discussed. A big item at that point in time was restricting access points on Parker Boulevard and trying to limit that. And that's how we had come up with the plan of the initial concept of the Phillips and Washington access streets. There was a lot of discussion and if not even controversy about the Washington access street, whether in that the curve was tight, there wasn't enough straight street on that side to really make it compliant.
Mm-hmm.
And it was some debate as to how much benefit it was going to provide. But the tying on this property at Phillips does indeed make one less access point onto Parker. It is also kind of Phillips happens to be kind of at the crest of the hill there, which makes it easy to view traffic both ways. Do have some concerns that this is adding yet another congestion point on that street that seems to be getting busier and busier. So that's an item that I have a lot of heartburn over. And other than redoing the plan, trying to make the cul-de-sac off of Bridgeview much shorter, essentially evolving it right when it goes into the new property, and then making Phillips a through street over to maybe a T intersection and some cul-de-sacs to the north. Other than a complete rework, I don't know what can be done to solve that heartburn. But it seems like every one of us on the commission has their own individual things that they view as important, and it seems like limiting access onto the primary corridors has always been one that I seem to fall back onto.
Yeah, and even though we didn't say it, I mean, obviously there's not going to be any driveways that are allowed out to Parker. I mean, it's just
And then just a curiosity question is my last one, and that is on the trees that are put along Parker Boulevard. Those over the long haul looks like they're going to be maintained by the property owners of those lots. Just curious what the plan is for the maintenance of those trees prior to something being built on those lots, and or when they're planning on being installed. We've had a case in our city where we've had a nice buffer put in, and lots weren't sold initially in that area, and the buffer turned into disrepair and was essentially needed to be redone. That's.
I guess our approach is that we are proposing that the developer would initially install the plantings.
Okay.
And that once the lot is sold, that it would become the homeowner to be responsible for their maintenance. And I guess if there is a period of time, between lot buyer and development, that properties would take care of the maintenance of those trees until that lot is sold. That's our approach.
Okay.
I guess I'll say one thing about the heartburn too. We took a long look at making this connection. We thought that was kind of forced. Seemed like putting in a lot of street without much benefit.
Not going to argue with you.
Yeah. And we took another look at making this connection, and we landed on the side of obviously placing this access so that it was midway between the two, which according to standards, it does have the appropriate separation between the two. If they were real close, obviously there would be interference from one turning movement of one intersection to the other. But I guess we felt like we're trying to save as many trees as we can. This concept seemed to us to be the most reasonable. And I can understand the desire to make other connections, but we don't feel like, given the separation here, which is about, I'm going to say, 350 feet from center line to center line, that separation is sufficient to indicate to us anyway that there really wouldn't be a conflict, between traffic. It's just, yes, this separation is pretty much the same as the separation that you have here, just to the north of us. And I don't know, we'd sure like to avoid making this and having one more swath of trees removed along Park.
Yeah. And the separation isn't my concern. It's the additional access point.
I understand.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments?
I'm looking at this right, there's 50, this one had 53
Yes,
lots and this one has 50.
that's correct.
Reduction in number of lots.
Well, my concern still is, we kind of went through this a couple of years ago with duplexes across the street, where the people that were in the homes back there thought that was all going to be woods, and it's not a good assumption because they didn't know the plan. But they did ask to talk to the developer about leaving some small strips there. And I think they did still protect some. Or am I incorrect on that?
No,
That's correct. So, I guess, Jerry, I'd like to see you, because we have some citizens here, I guess I'd like to see you at least talk to these people, have these lots along Seagrass Avenue in Bud against your help, and see if you could work some kind of a buffer to keep, if it's even 10 feet of the existing trees that are already there, would give a little bit of buffer to everybody. And hopefully you could take that up and the number of lots that you have and still keep your everything you have together, but still develop a buffer along that area. I don't think it needs to be 40 or 50 feet of trees though. And the other option would be to take your plantings right around and put them between the two developments there that you have out on Park Boulevard. And but that'd be a little weird because you still have trees that they may never take down.
Yeah.
But you will have areas where within the setback from the street and possibly even to the rear setback, those trees will all.
That certainly could be, unless there are some that are really close to the property line that would be saved. I know these end lots, well, 19, 35, and 50 are a little bit wider than the rest of the lots in the subdivision, and we'd be more than happy to talk about what we can do along there with the neighbors.
And I don't put it on you, you're here tonight and concerned, and if you could talk to these gentlemen, and maybe when this does come back, I don't have any problem with the overall concept or anything like that, but when you do come back to your next plat, maybe it helps show that somewhere.
Fine.
Because if you do that, I think that'll help get it passed quick. If you don't, we may have, 30 people here instead of 3.
That other one worked because the owner of those lots negotiated with the folk next door neighbors, and they promised to do. We don't know who the owner on this property is going to be, and unless you put a covenant into that property, and this designates who's going to keep it up and everything else.
And there was also a change in zoning density.
Yeah.
There isn't a change in zoning
To
density.
legally force that, keep it there, you're going to have covenants and stuff like that, because if I bought that lot and I want to take that tree, I would be awfully upset that, I can't because you're required to do this. So,
But there's a way to legally do this.
I know there is.
I'm just saying, can we do
I
that?
could put a burden on whoever buys 1935, 50 that they, you know what I'm saying, I don't know. Not that I'm against it. I always like to have, those visual breaks like that. But, you're talking about property rights here, and you got to. It worked any other time because the owner was the one that did it. They negotiated. Folks that owned apartments did it, and you don't know who's going to own that. What they want to do.
Okay, just.
Well, we'd be happy to further discuss on that topic.
Yeah, that's something to certainly think about, but I'm concerned that if you want to do that, you're going to impose requirements on the folks that own those 3 lots that none of the other lots in that development had.
And those 3 lots are less dense than the land to the south.
Yeah, so, I don't know, that's the one. But I do like the way this is done to preserve the trees.
Yeah, I think it would be, very, very possible, for the developer to come in and propose to put parallel street to sawgrass, or seagrass rather, and have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 homes backing up to the existing 7 homes. This obviously is a much better arrangement in that we just have 1, 2, 3 back up. And like I say, I think, we can make some commitment as to how to do some buffering that would add something to the seagrass rear yards.
Well, I would hope that the folks that purchase those lots would want to keep as many of those trees as they could as well.
One would think that's reasonable, yes.
Pretty narrow lots. Anytime you get within 20 feet of construction, trees are going to die.
But the rear yards,
Yeah.
There's a good potential for a nice strip of woods going up through there.
Maybe that's 50%.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And the people that live there right now, if they don't have anything in their backyard, they can plant trees too. If they don't like it. It's just a suggestion that, I think it's on you if you want to talk to these people about something like that, to do so. Otherwise, it's going to go through like this. Thanks, Jerry.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move approval of master plan, Ridgeview Plat 2, subject to the comments and recommendations on the memo dated January 16th.
And a second?
Did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm sorry, did you want to?
With the addition that the trail connection go through to the street.
And a second?
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Triplett,
Yes.
Pinkins,
No.
Sires,
Abstain.
Dietz.
Yes.
Thank you.
I like it to proceed.
You won't now, it's passed.
I can come back.
Well, and they can also go to council
They can go to council.
with a negative or without a positive recommendation.
And I think the developer's willing to look at it with the neighbors. And that's all I'd like to see.
Okay, number 8 on the agenda is the Stewart plat of survey. Might have staff start with this and just kind of just through it.
Oh,
Here is here.
okay. Oh, yes. I see. Actually, it became a little bit complicated. It's actually a fairly straightforward plat of survey. Bruce Stewart owns a good chunk of this ground, and is a portion of that would then be in the plat of survey be combined with the lot to the south that's owned by her son, Michael Stewart, and Carrie, who is here. There would be lot tie agreements. It actually takes care of a non-conformity that's existing on that parcel D to the south, where they do not have the required 35-foot rear yard behind their home, kind of in the vicinity of where the pool house sits. I'm not sure how that happened. I don't know. That was some years ago, but so this would take care of that. It would put the pool house as well as the barn on the same property as the south house. Then the remainder of the property, it combines them. There is a dash line there. The city has drafted an agreement that would consolidate that property, because the area to the south of that dash line would be non-conforming. So they're consolidating it all as one, so they can't subdivide the Ruth Stewart property without coming back before you with their platted survey or platted subdivision, whereby all the parcels would meet the zoning regulations. We've also asked them to sign a petition waiver for public sidewalks for both what will be parcel D and the new parcel 218-160. There'll be a lot tie agreement that ties those two parcels together, and then a petition waiver for sidewalks out front. And then there'll also be a petition waiver for sidewalks out front on Ruth Stewart's property. So there's 4 legal documents. I mean, fairly straightforward, but we do have 4 separate legal documents. Ones that kind of tie all the parcels back together, and then the other 2 for each side, and then the sidewalk for each side. All those comments have been addressed. The legal documents have been prepared. I maybe even signed. They technically don't need to be signed before they go to council, but we're in good shape on those legal documents as well.
Is the barn still in non-conformance with side yard,
No, it meets the side yard requirement for an accessory structure, which is what it is.
which is how?
3.
side yard.
Yeah, home requires 8 foot.
Is the well, what is the well? Is it just like for garden or something, or is it for the houses, or?
That I don't know.
Oh, okay.
It's just there forever.
Okay.
It's not just.
The write-up talks about there being no sidewalks along North Broadway by these properties, and the sidewalk does go right up
Yes,
to
it does.
the edge of the property.
Yeah.
Why would we not want the sidewalks extended at this time?
Yeah, it's well, they wouldn't even go any farther. I mean, this is where you start getting up to the spillway. So it really, these two sidewalks would serve just these two homes. So-
These two sidewalks would give sidewalk access up to that driveway for folks walking out there.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Currently,
I mean,
who
yeah,
currently
and I mean,
walk out
that's-
on the rec trail shoulder.
yeah. I guess we recommended it just from the standpoint that it was rural in nature, and that's typically what we've done. But you certainly, it gives the city the opportunity to require those sidewalks to go in at any time. And I mean, certainly if you guys want to require them to go in now, then it's your prerogative.
And who owns north of here?
Or
I think that's for property.
Yeah.
So the city sign, is that on core property?
It's on right of way, used to be county. That is still county, because I think it's right outside city limits.
So I believe I think that's in the, right north of here is the parcel that the sign is sitting on. It's right on that curve. So if anyone was to put a sidewalk there, it would, likely need to be at city expense, I would think, if we wanted to go out any further. But I think that stretch of sidewalk, if you are driving out there, you see a lot of people walking along the side of the road. And it's the 4-foot rec trail on each side. So, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like that's grossly unsafe for them to be walking out there. But if you had kids or your dog, a sidewalk would be it'd be nice to be further off the road.
yeah, I guess I hadn't realized that, but I don't get up that far.
Yeah. And also with the property of the south, we, had that sidewalk put in with the intention of it being extended someday.
Right, and I mean, again, the petition waiver does give it
Yeah.
council's discretion, but if you want to make a recommendation that it would go in sooner or whenever, that would be something for you to, that you could recommend, certainly recommend to city council and council.
Any other questions or comments? Would entertain a motion.
Let's see, well, I move we approve the plat of survey, subject to the review comments and recommendations on the memo dated January 16, 2019. This is right to the Stewart plat of survey.
And a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Now roll call, please.
Sires?
Yes.
Dietz?
Yes.
Triplett? Yes. Hinkins?
Yes. And now do we need a second motion for item 8B? The way that's worded, or is it covered, do you think? Which is the tie agreement.
Yeah, and the memo I kind of lumped all together.
Matter to me.
To cover it, why don't we go ahead and
Yeah.
handle that under a separate motion?
I move, we recommend council approve the lot tie agreement consolidated parcel 218-160, existing parcel D owned by Mike Stewart.
Second.
And roll call, please.
Sires? Dietz?
Yes.
Triplett?
Gotta be
Yes.
faster.
Hinkins?
Yes. Okay, item 9 of the agenda has been removed, so item 10 is the council liaison report.
Yeah, so thank you. close out the year formally in December, so it's been a while, but, the only really substantive matters I have to update, we're heavy into, budget season now, and we're put in the same position we were last year. There's, Des Moines, West Des Moines, Urbandale, Pleasant Hill, I think 5, and I may be missing one, that have another local option sales tax vote in March, which obviously impacts our ability to accurately budget revenue. Having gone through the exact same thing last year, hopefully we learned some lessons, but it just puts us in a tough spot. So that's been occupying a lot of time. Also gotten a decent amount of questions on water increase, and look forward to kind of tackling that a little bit more head on than we were able to last year. I guess those are the big things we're working on now. We'll bring up, just as an awareness for you guys, that there's some discussion around the liaison. If they'll continue, that's the mayoral decision. So if I'm not here in an official capacity, quite honestly, I'll probably be here in an unofficial one. I think it's good homework, the discussion that you guys have and some of these key developments. So not so fast. Yeah, I guess you squash your hopes on that front, but that's kind of more.
On that local option sales tax, how does that work? I mean, if the other cities approve, which I'm sure some of them, not all of them, then it becomes, there's some sort of formula thing that determines how that's shared, and so that would impact our share. I guess.
Yeah, exactly. So, Gary, clap my hand if I describe this inaccurately. In essence, any place that charged that 7% rather than 6% in the past in Polk County fell to us. Mitchellville, and there's 2 other communities last year. So that extra chunk, and I say extra chunk, using that term loosely. Sure. There's a lot of back and forth on online retailers, and where even geographically based in Polk County businesses selling somewhere else. So it's always sort of been a crapshoot on what we would get. But splitting that up further, I think they do it population based. So obviously, if there was any, Des Moines passes it, our share to draw rough estimates went from essentially last year, or 2 years ago to last year, from 100% almost to 25%, would go to 5 to, I don't know, small. And that is an estimate anyway, right? So it's a real, and Lindsay and Gary have done a great job doing as best they can. State Department of Management, is that the right department? To try and figure out what that's going to be in their for budget, on the revenue side. So it gets tough, and I think that we're planning for as a conservative amount of what we would be getting, which is about $1.5 million less than it was 2 years ago, and not to back to the water issue, but that's a lot of the reason that you saw the Rock Creek fee added a year ago. Just because that a lot of that money was used for that. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, that's
What's the thought process on having a liaison versus not having a liaison?
Without speaking for the mayor, I think there was, got the meeting on YouTube now. So everybody can see what was said directly. It didn't have that when the liaison was started. And we're just, again, it isn't necessary. I mean, again, for me, the answer is yes. So whether I'm here unofficially or officially, it's legit. But I know adjusting some of the finance and personal committees too to get on a more rotation basis. And I wasn't actually I missed. I'm way out of practice. So we didn't have the second meeting in December, and I was out of town the first meeting in January. So It's been the longest gap council meeting in a long time, but, so I missed the discussion around that, but.
I just, speaking for myself, I know I appreciate having a liaison here from the communication perspective both ways. You being able to present our case better to council, and also being able to better vocalize some council concerns back to us and things that they're hearing from citizenry. So I hope it stays.
Nothing else, it's taught me discretion, sitting here and letting you all have the first crack at some of the points that need to be made has been a good lesson for me. So, one that I can continue to need to learn probably, so we'll see.
Okay, thanks. Item 11 on the agenda is staff report.
I have nothing, Mr. Chair.
I was just going to introduce Travis Thornburg. I asked him to come tonight just so he's familiar with what a P&Z. Usually they're fuller up front. People here. But just he hadn't been to a P&Z meeting before, and he's been doing a lot of the reviews for me.
Okay.
As well. So just in case I happen to miss a meeting, then you're at least familiar with who Travis is.
Well,
too.
welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Item 12 on the agenda is commission report. So this is my final meeting as chairman. I just wanted to say, yeah, I did that a lot.
Wait a minute, you can go another round.
I just wanted to say thank you to staff and commission for your support for the last year and for making being the chairperson a very easy thing to do. So appreciate that. So if there is not anything else, would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And so meeting is adjourned.
Good job.
Good.
You really do. Good job. Yeah.
In not a routine year either, for the whatever month that was.
Oh, that was a fun one, wasn't it?
Get some points just for that one.
Oh, sure.
Oh.
Oh, not a problem. Let's get some people.
Well,
Yeah, I did.